Plotting points in the Cartesian plane. Okay, so you guys have probably seen something like this before. An x-axis, a y-axis, and then a whole bunch of little marks. Usually this is 1, 2, 3, right? And over here, we would have negative numbers. Down here, we would have negative numbers. Over here, we have positives. So this is called the x-axis. Going this way, this is a number line, right? -4, -3, -2, -1. This point right here would be 0. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, etc. And then we have a second number line, flipped on its head and stuck so that the 0 of this second number line meets up with the 0 of the first number line. And we have the positive numbers up here, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. And the negative numbers on that number line down here, -1, -2. This is called the Cartesian coordinate system, or the Cartesian plane. Cartesian coordinate system. And what it is a way of representing not just one dimension, not numbers along a number line, but 2 dimensions, numbers in space. And so I can choose a certain point on this Cartesian plane right here, and every point that I choose has a unique identity. And the identity is going to be written as the x coordinate, comma, the y coordinate. So for example, this point right here, its x coordinate is 3, because it lines up with the 3 on the x-axis, and its y coordinate is 4, because it lines up with the 4 on the y-axis. So one thing to remember is x, then y, right? X, then y. X, then y. It's alphabetical order. The first is x, the second is y, right? Another way that that helps me to remember this, the y-axis, the letter y has this long leg that goes down, just like the y-axis goes down on the paper. Okay? So x goes this way, that's the first point, 3, and then y goes this way, that's the second point, 4. So what would be the coordinates of this point right here? The first coordinate is the x. What x does it line up with? 7. 7 and -2. And the second coordinate is the y, which is -2. What would be the coordinates of this point right here?
1.
Very close. X is actually -1, and then the y is 1. This point right here. Okay? And what would be the coordinates of this point right here? My x is -3 maybe. Now, when you do this, I'll give you actual graph paper so the lines all line up, and it'll be a lot easier to tell. But, so -3, and then what does this look like here? This is -1, -2, -3, -4. I think this is closer to -5. They may not always be labeled, right? But that's okay. We know that each line is just another number. So we have different points. Notice that any point in this part of the graph is going to have both positive and negative numbers. I mean, both positive numbers, right? Both x and y will be positive for anything in this quadrant of the graph. And so kind of because of that, we call this quadrant the first quadrant, labeled with a Roman numeral 1. This fourth of the graph is quadrant 1. And you're never going to guess which one is quadrant 2.
I know. The one right there.
Quadrant 2 is not this one.
It's that one.
This one?
No. Yeah. No. Yeah. That. Nate, just say it.
Which one do you think it is?
I don't know both.
The top next one. The top next one.
It is. So I think of it in a couple different ways. It goes reverse, or sorry, I was going to say reverse clockwise, but counterclockwise. 1, 2. But also, if you think about the number line, right? If we're on X on our number line, kind of the next place we would go would be over here. After we've done all of the positive numbers, then we'd want to do some of the negative numbers. So we do the negative x's first. And then we come down here, quadrant 3. What would be true of any point in quadrant 3? Like notice this point, -3, -5. Both the x and y coordinates are negative.
Like
In quadrant 3, all of your coordinates are going to be negative, right? And then over here we have quadrant 4. So labeled as quadrant. Quadrant 1, quadrant 2, quadrant 3, and quadrant 4. So this is our Cartesian plane, right? And we can have not only points in this Cartesian plane, we can have shapes and line segments. So for example, if I joined this point to this point, does anyone know the name of this shape that I just made?
A line?
It's actually not a line. This is called a line segment because it's only part of a line. A line would be something like this. Maybe it starts here and goes here, but on the ends I would write arrows. This is a line because it goes on forever in both directions. Right? So a line segment has endpoints, whereas a line, there are points on this line. For example, the point -4, +4 looks like it would be on this line. But there's no end point to the line. It goes on forever in both directions. And eventually, as you continue with math in high school, you'll see all sorts of shapes on this Cartesian plane. You could have circles. You can have this weird shape called a parabola. There's not supposed to be 2 lines there. A parabola, right? All sorts of different shapes we can actually graph on this line. On this plane, sorry, on this Cartesian plane. So, what I want to do today is just practice getting used to this plane. And I'm not going to film this part. We're going to do it, you're going to just practice on your own. But what we're going to practice is where do you plot points, right? So if I gave you the point -1, 5, and I give you a graph, where would you put that on the graph?
The -1 would be on the x, and the 5 would be on the So it would be in
Yeah. So it would be -1 on the x, and then 5
but it would be
on the
on
y.
the second quadrant.
And so it's in quadrant 2. And sometimes what you'll see is you'll see this label, like point A. And that just means they want you to label your point A. So if I gave you point B being at 3, -2, where would I put that on my graph?
First, you would put it in down there in the 4. Quadrant 4.
In quadrant 4, good. So I go over 1, 2, 3, down 1, 2, and I have a point right there at 3, -2. And I could label that as B. Now sometimes they're not going to want you to label it, you don't have to worry about that, but we're going to be plotting points, not plotting world domination.